now.
Thanks, Heather. All right, so what we're looking at on screen right now is Eclipse PPM. It's opened right inside the web browser. It is, of course, a software as a service offering, so there's nothing for you to install and nothing for you to maintain to use this product. What I'm going to go through very quickly in the next 15 minutes or so is how you can take advantage of some of those items that Heather talked about earlier right inside the Eclipse tool and how you can use this to jumpstart your PMO. Now, this first view we're looking at, this is something we call the portfolio summary dashboard. It's specific to the high-level leadership. It allows them to get a view down the left-hand side of the screen of the projects that we're working on. And across the top, what we're able to see is really two things. We're able to see how our projects are progressing. So looking at things like the amount of dollars invested, and even just whether we're doing our project right or whether it's starting to go off track. The other thing we're also able to do here is get some additional visibility into how this project is aligning with our corporate plans. Now, one way you might do that is with prioritization. Here you could take the approach of just a stated high, medium, or low priority. Or you could go one step further and actually have a score out of 100 that's determined based on a scorecard with criteria that you define, with scoring ranges that you define, with weights that you define that arrive to that value. So all this together gives you the visibility to make sure that you can see all those projects, make sure that you're doing them right, and make sure you're doing your right projects in the first place, to make sure you're maximizing those investments in terms of dollars and resources as well, to be able to take on the right projects. Now keep in mind, since this system is designed for all types of users and really to put all different types of work and processes related to your projects and even operations, each different user is going to see a somewhat different view. So while we do have this dashboard for the high-level leadership and executives, we'll see something a little bit later for those project managers and for individual team members, for instance, that looks a little bit different and caters to their needs. Now, in many cases, you might look at a dashboard view like this in a system and you might say, well, that looks fairly generic. That's not exactly what I need. Well, that's pretty common, in fact, so we actually give you the option to pick and choose the specific columns that you'd like to use on this screen. There's, in fact, about 100 predefined groups, predefined columns in 10 different groups, such as, for example, financials, where we could look at things like planned return on investment in dollars or percent, or perhaps we just want to understand who's taking on specific resource roles, who's the reviewer, who's the sponsor, and so forth. If you don't find what you want here, you can also add in your own custom properties as well. After that, it's a process of just dragging and dropping to really just place these elements exactly where you want, size them as you want, and sort them as you want. Keep in mind, though, during the implementation, during the setup of this tool, we actually do it all for you. So you don't have to do that. But if you're a power user and you want to go in, you're always going to have that capability to adjust those items and even hover over top to see specific values, such as the complete last status update made that I'm seeing hovering over here. One other thing you might want to do to further shape your view is actually group and even chart based on any of these classifiers, so priority, the portfolio, the status, and so forth. Interestingly enough, if we take that status and we group by it, when we see those projects grouped into the buckets such as requested, approved, executed, and completed, what we're really able to do here is get visibility into those processes, into that governance that's going on behind the scene. Because typically when you request a project, and that could be from an intake form, it could be a bulk import, or it could be just creating it right in the system, you're going to have it land into one of these buckets, most often the requested bucket. But before you actually want to have that project activated and going ahead, you probably want to take some additional steps. So for instance, before this project goes to approved, we might do an evaluation of it. We might actually then send out a notification saying, hey, this is ready to become approved, and ask one or perhaps more individuals to sign off before it goes in to that approved phase. You can in fact pick and choose the number of phases, the naming of these phases, and even whether each project follows that exact same process, or you want a different portfolio by portfolio or project by project. You may also notice here I've actually put in a total budget, some total actuals right beside each of these groups. That's of course summarizing for all of those projects inside that bucket what the total budget would be. If I want to view this in a more graphical way, I can in fact simply chart based on this same item. And now I can see the total budget by status, or at a glance, I can see that we have about 10 times the total budget in executing projects as in those that are approved. So really what that means is I can understand right when I open this dashboard at a glance how we're doing in terms of the budget by status, or perhaps how we're doing in terms of the project health, how many projects are in need of attention and how many are doing well. This in fact is all saving on the fly into my own customized, personalized dashboard view. So if I log out of the system, if I come back in, I'm going to be greeted with exactly the same structure of view that I left off with, but with the newest, most real-time information right inside here. Now, in many cases, you're going to want to drill in a little bit further, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. There certainly is a lot of ability to drill in. You'll also run into many scenarios, though, in organizations where you meet a little bit of resistance. When you're setting up a new tool, there's a lot of training involved, there's a lot of documentation, and there's a lot of tools you might learn over the year even. So you'll see a bit of resistance from that executive leadership saying, hey, can you just send me a report? You know what? That's okay. You could actually send them a report from here, extracting what we see on the dashboard view, or running a configurable, context-sensitive project executive summary report here. So we'll run it across those same projects that we're seeing inside this view. That's something that a large number of other systems out there might do for you, but there's also something that Eclipse will do for you that goes one step further, and that's give you the option to use something we call the Eclipse PPM add-in for Excel. When you think about it at the surface, you're probably thinking, wait a minute, we're already using Excel right now. We're trying to get away from it. Is there a way we could do that? Well, keep in mind what we're doing here is we're actually taking Excel, and rather than just using it as a way to view a static report, this additional tab is giving me a way to log in, to pull in reports on the fly, and to update any of those reports as time goes on. Now, I'll tell you why this is so important, because when we look at this list of projects down the left, and this set of data points across the top, so really something very similar to what we saw in the portfolio summary dashboard view, not only am I able to see this information here, but I'm able to refresh it with the most up-to-date information at any time. And it actually keeps my format. It'll keep these icons, it'll keep these data bars, it'll keep these heat maps we see over here, and for example, the grouping with color coding by project owner. In fact, if I go in and just change right now some of the formatting such as color, including the font color in this case, when I go back and refresh this report, what literally happens is the newest information comes in, it updates the list of projects, the information for each project, and it keeps all of the formatting in place that I already had right there. Now what this means is I can pick and choose as a high-level leader, do I want to view this in a report form, or do I want to view this in the main dashboard view that we saw earlier in the system? And I don't need to do both. So I can continue to work in the way that works best for me. So that helps us to make sure that all users are going to get a benefit from this system right from the get-go. Okay, so we've seen a little bit about how the executive leadership could definitely benefit from a tool like this. What about the project managers? What about the individuals working on the project? Well, they can benefit a lot too. If we go back into the tool, one of the first things you'll notice is that all these different projects, they're presented here with information that of course does have a lot more detail behind the scenes. How do we get that additional detail? I can in fact drill in to any of these projects to see what we call a snapshot view. That snapshot is showing me the complete last status update made, including health indicators. It's showing me the schedule progress, the budget versus expenditures, and also the number of open risks and issues. I could leave that right there and not drill in any further if that's enough for me, or I could continue to drill in one step at a time right up to the level of my permissions. So typically this is where you'd stop as a high-level leader, but as I drill in here, we're actually now seeing where I would start as a project manager. So when we look at this project is showing one single dashboard view that's allowing me to see all the health indicators, the progress of the project, both that expected amount complete in red and that actual percent complete represented by this blue bar. We can also see all the financials, accomplishments, full status update, and additional schedule information. Where is all that information coming from? It's coming from all these tabs you see across the top. And of course, this view is configurable in terms of what panels are showing here and even how they're positioned as well. So as a project manager, I can easily keep an eye on what's going on in the project, and it's also very easy to enter and maintain that information. Here I can actually see there's an area where I can view, where I can manage my documents. There's an area where I can maintain my schedule, including dependencies between those different elements, including the resources assigned. I can even have notifications sent out on these tasks telling resources when they need to start work or when the preceding task is done. That really facilitates greater communication and collaboration. Of course, there's also risks and issues. There's a financial area where I can measure everything from funding to benefits. And I could keep that at a very high level of detail, or I could actually get very, very granular here, going down to a monthly level, line level items, etc. I could even choose to have financial indicators loaded on top of the screen here as well. One of the things that often happens before all of those items fall into place, though, is the evaluation of the project. When this project was first created, we actually had someone come in and score this project based on a specific set of criteria that we defined, including the number of criteria, the scoring ranges, the weights, the exact wording of them, and literally the person scoring this, all they needed to do was enter a single score for each. The system generated all the rest, a weighted score, a total score out of 100. That really is one of the ways we can better align our projects with our objectives and also get better visibility into it. This particular one, it allows you to better understand what's the relative value of this project versus others scored against that same consistent set of criteria. Some other ways that exist include risk scoring, objective alignment, or alignment with different parts of the organization. Now, it's very important to note as we look at this tool today, it's something you can start with and you can build on later on. So if you don't want to use all these different tabs, if you don't want to see all these different ways of scoring, you don't need to do that. You don't need to include that in your project. You could actually start with something very basic, a project with just one or two tabs, where you're just tracking at a very high level, maybe just a planned start and end date and some milestones. It doesn't matter, though, whether you're tracking in that detail or much more. You're going to be able to see all these updates on a bulletin board view, which is sort of like an audit trail of everything that's gone on in this project since it was created, including who's made changes, when, and exactly what those changes were. You can also make updates from here as well. So that's a little bit about how the project managers can benefit. What about individual resources working on tasks? They might go in through their smartphone or tablet. They might go in through the main interface. They might go in exclusively through email. But regardless of which way they choose, they're going to be able to view and update their tasks. So for instance, if I wanted to go in through my smartphone or tablet, I could make use of something called Eclipse Go. Here I can see projects, tasks, issues, even risks that I'm following and monitoring, and I can actually see sort of a news feed. I can then also see what are the tasks, issues, and risks assigned to me. I can go in, I can make updates right from my smartphone, right from my tablet. And of course, with different tasks, there's going to be different options. What if I prefer not to even log into a system? Going back to that example, we talked about the executive who'd prefer to work through Excel, using that as a way to get that live information pulled in through Eclipse. Is there a slightly more hands-off approach for the resources? Well, yes, there is. You could also choose to use basic email notifications. Here I'm showing you something that's a digest form, where approximately 6 a.m. every morning, I'm receiving a list of those recent activities. So the projects, the tasks, the issues, the risks that I've chosen to follow, and all the updates associated with them. More important though, you can see I'm actually receiving a list of items I should be working on. And quite interesting, I can actually click on any of those items to make an update. So I can literally send in an update to the system without having to go log in separately at all. So I could view and update entirely through email for those basic tasks as an individual resource. So hopefully that shows you a little bit about how each of those users can benefit from the system, how they could actually put their work, put their processes into the system. Now, just before I hand back to Heather, though, I'm going to show you one more thing. There was something we talked about, which was visibility into the timing of the projects and to the availability of the resources. And that's something you can also see from that first dashboard view we looked at. And you're probably wondering, how am I going to see all this information on here? There's already a lot on screen. Well, we actually give you a second tab. You can go into that. It shows still one project per line down the left-hand side of the screen, and it's still grouped by those different stages of the life cycle. But now what we've got is on the right-hand side of the screen, everything to the right-hand side of this repositionable bar that we have right here, you can see a rolling timeline view. I've chosen to view all of 2015, and this is where we can see for specific projects such as cybersecurity initiative, how much is done in green and how much is remaining in blue. And this one, as you can see, is about halfway done. We can also hover over top to see milestones or even overlay those on top. Now, I did mention as I open this screen, you're going to be able to get visibility into your resources. And that's going to allow you to do two things. One, you're going to be able to understand the level of time invested from those resources across all projects in the portfolio. Now, this upper and lower portion of the view are linked together. So now I can look in the lower portion of the view month by month, since that's the time scale that I've chosen, at one individual, multiple individuals, or even at a team. So here I'm looking at Anna, Darren, and Carolyn. That's actually a team of project managers, and I'm using units of full-time equivalents. There's 3 people in the team. They can do the work of 3 people. Now, where they're currently allocated, so I can understand that investment, that's actually appearing below, and you'll notice there's 2 colors here. Now, the first color we see in green, that's the projects people are working on. That's pretty easy to understand. But something that's often overlooked is that operational time. So keep the lights on operations, personal time off, personal development and training. You do want to track that as well to get a full picture of where people are investing their time so you can better understand where they have time available, whether or not they're at full capacity. This is where you can start to have really great discussions about, hey, we're over capacity already, we need to make adjustments. Once you've got all this information in a tool, you're going to see that there's a lot less going on in terms of stealth or shadow projects, and you're able to see it all here. A next step you might take, and again, keep in mind this is very easy to set up, very easy to get in the system. You'd be surprised, and if you want to see a more complete demonstration customized to you, please do contact Heather or myself. But at a basic level, here we can actually see the requested projects, approved projects, even some executing projects are going to need more resources. Where can I see that? How can I represent that? Well, there's actually an option here to show demand for incoming projects. So I can see in April where we're going to be over capacity. How could I address that issue? There's so many different ways. I could filter out low priority projects, requested projects, or I could actually drill in and see what projects are causing the issue. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to drill in, and I can see a list sorted from the most planned effort of all of these projects that are making up these bars right down to the least. So at the top of the list, we see PMO skills upgrade, internal training. I'm going to filter that out, and what we see is that would be one way to resolve that upcoming resource issue that we have later in the month of April here. All right, so with that, hopefully that does give you a high-level perspective of both how this could really tie in with the whole PMO enhancement aspect, and also what you could get, how you could benefit out of using a tool like this. Back to you, Heather.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Darren. All right, so let me switch back over to my screen. And we will close our session out. So thanks again, everyone, once again for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about Eclipse PPM, we welcome you to visit our website, eclipseppm.com, for more information. If you have questions regarding today's webinar, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. My contact information is listed on the screen. And for those of you who need PDU information, the number is listed on the screen as well. So with that, we'll say goodbye, and we look forward to speaking with you again. Have a great day.